The cold November wind cut through the downtown streets as the sun began to set. James Washington sat quietly on a wooden bench outside Chen's convenience store. His worn military duffel bag rested beside him on the ground. The bag was old and faded, but it was clean. James kept everything he owned clean even now. James pulled his jacket tighter around his body. It was not expensive, but it was warm enough. He checked his watch. The VA shelter would open its doors in 2 hours. Until then, he would wait here. Mrs. Chen always let him sit on this bench. She never complained. Sometimes she even brought him hot tea. A police car rolled slowly down the street. James noticed it but did not move. He had done nothing wrong. He was simply waiting. The car passed him once, then turned around and came back. It stopped right in front of the bench. James took a deep breath and waited. Officer Derek Mills stepped out of the car. He was a large man with 15 years on the police force. His face showed no kindness as he looked at James. Mills had a reputation in the neighborhood. People knew to be careful around him. Complaints had been filed against him many times, but nothing ever happened. He always kept his job. Mills walked up to the bench with heavy steps. His hand rested on his belt near his weapon. "You need to move along," he said. His voice was hard and cold. James looked up at him calmly. "Good evening, officer. I'm not causing any trouble. Just waiting for the shelter to open." Mills's eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask what you were doing. I told you to move. This isn't a hotel." James remained calm. His military training had taught him to stay cool under pressure. "Sir, I'm on a public bench. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm just sitting here quietly." This answer seemed to make Mills angry. His face turned red. "Don't tell me what the law is. I'm the law here. Now get up and move before I make you move." Mrs. Chen watched from inside her store. She had seen this before. Mills liked to bother people who looked poor or different. She felt worried for James. He was a good man. He always said thank you. He never stole anything. He helped other customers carry their bags sometimes. James spoke again, still calm. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I have every right to sit here. I'm waiting for the VA shelter. I'm a veteran." Mills laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. "A veteran? Sure you are. Let me guess, you were a general too?" His words were full of mockery. "No, sir, not a general," James replied quietly. "Let me see some ID," Mills demanded. He moved closer, standing over James in a way that felt threatening. James slowly reached into his jacket pocket. He moved carefully, keeping his hands visible. He had learned long ago that sudden movements could be dangerous. He pulled out his wallet and handed over his military ID card. Mills grabbed it roughly. He barely looked at it before tossing it back at James. The card fell to the ground. "This is fake." "Where did you buy this? Online?" James bent down slowly and picked up his ID. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "It's not fake, sir. That's my real military identification." "Right," Mills said. His voice was full of disbelief. "And I'm sure you have a million stories about your service. Let me guess, you saved the whole country?" James did not answer. He had learned that sometimes silence was better. He had actually saved many lives during his service, but he did not feel the need to prove anything to this officer. Mills walked around the bench like a predator circling prey. "You know what I think? I think you're just another con artist with a fake ID trying to get sympathy, using the military to make people feel sorry for you. It's disgusting." The word stung, but James kept his face neutral. He had faced enemy fire. He had lost friends in combat. He had led men through impossible situations. He would not let this officer break his dignity. "Officer, I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just sitting here waiting." "That's all," James said. Mills was not satisfied. "Stand up. I want to search that bag." James knew his rights. "Do you have probable cause, officer?" "I haven't committed any crime." This question made Mills even angrier. "Don't you dare question me. You think you know the law better than me? Stand up now or I'll arrest you for resisting." Mrs. Chen could not stay quiet anymore. She opened the door of her store and stepped outside. "Officer Mills," she called out. "This man is no trouble. He sits here sometimes. He's always respectful. Please leave him alone." Mills turned to her with fury in his eyes. "Ma'am, get back in your store. This doesn't concern you, unless you want trouble too." Mrs. Chen hesitated but stayed where she was. "He's a good man. He helps my customers. He never bothers anyone." "I said get back inside," Mills shouted. His voice echoed down the street. A few people on the sidewalk stopped to watch. James stood up slowly. He did not want Mrs. Chen to get in trouble because of him. "It's okay, Mrs. Chen, thank you. Please go back inside." Mrs. Chen looked worried, but she went back into her store. She kept watching through the window. Mills pointed at the duffel bag. "Open it now." James unzipped the bag slowly. Inside were his belongings. Some clothes all folded neatly, a small bag with toiletries, and at the bottom, carefully wrapped in cloth, were his military medals and commendations. There were also photographs of him in uniform, and his official discharge papers. Mills dumped the contents onto the bench roughly. Everything fell out in a mess. The medals clinked against each other. Papers scattered in the wind. James had to grab them before they blew away. Mills picked up one of the medals. It was a bronze star. He turned it over in his hand. "Where did you steal this from?" "I didn't steal it, sir." "I earned it," James said. His voice finally showed a hint of emotion. "Sure you did," Mills said with contempt. He picked up a photograph. It showed James in his army uniform standing next to several high-ranking military officials. James looked younger in the photo, his uniform crisp and covered with ribbons. Mills stared at the photo for a moment. Then he tossed it back onto the bench. Photoshop. Anyone can fake pictures these days. James carefully picked up his belongings and started putting them back in his bag. His hands shook slightly, not from fear but from controlled anger. He had commanded hundreds of soldiers. He had made decisions that saved lives. He had served his country with honor for 28 years. And now he was being treated like a criminal for sitting on a public bench. Mills pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need backup at Chen's convenience store. I have an uncooperative subject refusing to comply." James looked up in disbelief. "Officer, I've been completely cooperative. I've answered your questions. I've shown you my ID. I've let you search my bag. What exactly am I refusing to do?" "You're trespassing and causing a disturbance," Mills said flatly. "I'm doing neither of those things," James replied. Mills stepped closer, his face inches from James's. "Are you calling me a liar?" James could smell coffee on the officer's breath. He could see the hatred in his eyes. This was not about the bench or the bag or any law. This was about something much deeper, something uglier. "No, sir," James said quietly. "I'm just stating facts." Another police car arrived within minutes. A younger officer stepped out. Her name tag read Rodriguez. She looked at the scene carefully. She saw James standing calmly. She saw his military bag. She saw Mills tense and aggressive. "What's the situation?" Rodriguez asked. Mills did not look at her. "Vagrant refusing to move. Possibly stolen military items. I need help removing him from the area." Rodriguez walked over to the bench. She saw the scattered medals and papers. She picked up James's discharge papers. Her eyes widened as she read them. "Mills," she said slowly. "Did you look at these papers?" "Don't need to. They're all fake," Mills said dismissively. Rodriguez looked at James with new understanding in her eyes. "Sir, what's your name?" "James Washington," he replied. "And your rank?" she asked gently. James hesitated. He had not wanted to use his rank. He had not wanted special treatment. He just wanted to be left alone. But now he had no choice. "Colonel," he said quietly. "Retired Colonel James Washington, United States Army." Officer Rodriguez's face changed completely when she heard the word Colonel. She stood up straighter, almost at attention. Mills noticed her reaction and frowned. "What are you doing, Rodriguez?" Mills asked sharply. "Don't fall for his act." Rodriguez ignored him. She picked up another photograph from the bench. This one showed James in full dress uniform receiving a medal from a general. The ceremony looked official and important. She looked at James, then back at the photo. The face was the same. The bearing was the same. This was real. "Sir," Rodriguez said to James respectfully, "may I see your full military identification again?" James handed it to her. She examined it carefully. She had been in the Army Reserve before joining the police force. She knew what real military IDs looked like. She knew the security features. She knew the codes. This was absolutely genuine. "Colonel Washington," she said, her voice formal now. "I apologize for the situation." Mills grabbed the ID from her hand. "Don't call him that. He's probably some homeless con artist who stole a dead soldier's identity." A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. People were watching. Some had their phones out, recording everything. In today's world, police encounters could go viral in minutes. Everyone knew that. Mrs. Chen came back outside, unable to stay away. "I told you," she called out to Mills. "He's a good man. He comes here often, always polite, always clean. He helps people." An older man stepped forward from the crowd. He was wearing a baseball cap with Army veteran written on it. "Excuse me, officers. I think I know this man." Mills turned to him aggressively. "Back off, sir. This is police business," but the man did not back away. He walked closer, staring at James. Recognition lit up his face. "Colonel Washington." "Sir, is that you?" James looked at the man. He was younger, maybe in his 30s. His face was familiar. "Do I know you?" "Yes, sir," the man said excitedly. "Marcus Lopez. I attended your leadership conference at Fort Bragg 3 years ago. You spoke about combat decision-making. Your speech changed my whole career, sir." Marcus turned to the officers. "This man is the real deal. He's a legend in military circles. He commanded the 3rd Battalion. He served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. He has a Bronze Star with valor. He saved an entire unit under fire." Mills's face grew redder. "I don't care what you claim. Anyone can memorize military facts." Marcus pulled out his phone. He typed quickly, then showed the screen to Rodriguez. "Look, here's his official Army bio. It's still on the Department of Defense website." Rodriguez looked at the phone. Her eyes went wide. She scrolled through the information. Colonel James Washington. 28 years of service. 3 combat tours. Multiple commendations. Retired with full honors. There were photos of him at official ceremonies, meeting with generals, training soldiers. "Mills," Rodriguez said quietly. "We need to stop this now." Mills snatched the phone from her and looked at it. For the first time, doubt crossed his face. But his pride would not let him back down. Websites can be hacked. Anyone can put up fake information. The crowd was growing larger. More phones were out. Someone called out, "Why are you harassing a veteran? He's not doing anything wrong." Another voice shouted, "Leave him alone. This is wrong." Mills spun around. "Everyone back up. This is a police investigation." "You're all interfering!" Rodriguez stepped between Mills and the crowd. She spoke in a low voice that only Mills could hear. "Partner, we need to leave. This is going south fast." But Mills was too far gone. His ego, his anger, and his prejudice had taken over completely. He grabbed his handcuffs. "I'm taking him in. He's under arrest." "For what?" Rodriguez demanded. "Trespassing. Resisting arrest. Disorderly conduct," Mills rattled off. James spoke calmly, though his heart was racing. "I have not resisted anything. I have been completely cooperative. These charges are false." "Turn around," Mills ordered, moving toward James with the handcuffs. Marcus stepped forward. "You can't arrest him. He's done nothing wrong. Back off or you're next," Mills shouted. Rodriguez put her hand on Mills's arm. "Don't do this, please. Just call the sergeant. Let's get this sorted out properly." Mills shoved her hand away. "Don't tell me how to do my job." He grabbed James's arm roughly and twisted it behind his back. James did not resist. He had been in far more dangerous situations than this. He knew that resisting would only make things worse. He let Mills put the handcuffs on him, even though every instinct told him to fight back. The crowd erupted in angry shouts. "This is wrong!" "He's a veteran." "Someone call the news." Mrs. Chen was crying. Marcus was on his phone calling someone urgently. Rodriguez looked sick to her stomach. She pulled out her own phone and called the station. "Sergeant Bradley, this is Rodriguez. We have a situation. Mills just arrested someone, a retired Army colonel. This is going to be a problem. A big problem." Mills pulled James toward the police car. James walked with dignity, his head held high. The handcuffs bit into his wrists, but he did not complain. He had survived much worse than this. As Mills pushed James into the back of the car, Marcus ran up. "Colonel Washington, sir." "I'm calling the Veterans Association. I'm calling the American Legion. I'm calling every media outlet I can think of. We won't let this stand, sir." James nodded to him through the car window. "Thank you, son. But stay calm. Don't do anything that will get you in trouble." Mills slammed the car door shut. He turned to Rodriguez. "Get in. We're taking him to the station." Rodriguez stood her ground. "I'm driving separately, and I'm writing my own report. My report will be accurate." Mills's eyes blazed with anger. "You do that. See where it gets you." The drive to the station was short but felt long. James sat in the back seat, his hands cuffed behind him. The metal was cold and uncomfortable. He looked out the window at the passing streets. He had walked these streets in his younger days in uniform, proud and respected. Now he was in the back of a police car, treated like a criminal. He thought about the house fire 2 weeks ago. It had been an electrical problem. Everything happened so fast. He had gotten out safely, but everything he owned was destroyed. Years of memories gone in flames. The insurance company was working on his claim, but it took time. In the meantime, he had nowhere to go. The VA had been helpful, but their resources were limited. The shelter was clean and safe, but it only opened at night. During the day, homeless veterans had to find somewhere to wait. James usually went to the library or sat at Mrs. Chen's bench. He never bothered anyone. He just waited. Now he was under arrest. For sitting, for being homeless, for being black in the wrong place at the wrong time. When they arrived at the police station, Mills pulled James out of the car roughly. He marched him up the steps and through the front door. The station was busy with the evening shift change. Officers and civilians filled the lobby. Sergeant Tom Bradley was at the front desk. He was a stocky man in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. He had served in the Marines 20 years ago. When he saw Mills bringing in James, his expression became concerned. "What do we have here, Mills?" Bradley asked. "Vagrant, trespassing, resisting arrest, possibly stolen military property," Mills said coldly. Bradley looked at James carefully. He noticed the military bearing immediately. The straight posture, the calm eyes, the dignity. This was not an ordinary homeless person. "Did you read him his rights?" Bradley asked. "I don't need to until I question him," Mills said. Bradley frowned. "Let's get him processed properly." "What's your name, sir?" "James Washington," James replied clearly. "And what's your story, Mr. Washington?" Bradley asked gently. "Colonel Washington." Rodriguez's voice came from behind them. She had just entered the station. "He's a retired Army colonel. 28 years of service. Bronze Star recipient." The lobby went quiet. Several officers looked up from their work. The word colonel hung in the air like a bomb. Bradley's eyes widened. "Colonel, can you verify this?" Mills interrupted. "It's all fake, Sarge. Don't believe it." Bradley held up his hand for silence. He looked at James. "Sir, do you have identification?" "He already showed it," Rodriguez said. She pulled out her phone and showed Bradley the Department of Defense website. "It's all here. His service record. His commendations, everything." Bradley read the screen carefully. His face became very serious. He looked at Mills. "You arrested a retired colonel?" "I arrested a vagrant who was trespassing," Mills insisted. Bradley turned to James. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to make some calls to verify your service record. Would that be acceptable?" "Of course, Sergeant," James replied calmly. "Mills, take the cuffs off him," Bradley ordered. "No way." "He's under arrest," Mills protested. "Take the cuffs off now. That's an order," Bradley said firmly. Reluctantly, Mills removed the handcuffs. James rubbed his wrists where the metal had pressed into his skin. Red marks showed where the cuffs had been too tight. Bradley led James to a chair. "Please sit, sir. Can I get you water? Coffee?" "Water would be good." "Thank you, Sergeant," James said. Bradley brought him a bottle of water. Then he went to his desk and picked up the phone. He called the VA office first. Then he called the Department of Defense verification line. The conversations took several minutes. Everyone in the lobby watched and waited. Mills stood to the side, his arms crossed. His face showed anger and stubbornness. Rodriguez stood near James, looking uncomfortable. She knew this was going to explode into something much bigger. Bradley hung up the phone. His face was pale. He walked over to James and did something that shocked everyone in the room. He stood at attention and saluted. "Colonel Washington, sir, everything is verified. On behalf of this department, I apologize for what has happened to you tonight." James stood and returned the salute. It was automatic, a reflex from decades of military service. The gesture was sharp and precise. Everyone in the lobby could see this was a man who had worn a uniform with honor. "At ease, Sergeant," James said quietly. "No apology needed from you. You treated me with respect." Bradley lowered his salute but remained standing straight. "Sir, I just spoke with the VA and the DoD verification office. Your record is extraordinary. Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal. 28 years of service, multiple combat deployments." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. Sir, you are a genuine American hero. The words hung in the air. Every officer in the lobby was now staring at Mills. The judgment in their eyes was clear. Mills had arrested a decorated war hero for sitting on a bench. Mills's face was bright red now. But instead of showing shame or remorse, he became defensive. I didn't know. He looked like every other homeless guy. How was I supposed to know? Bradley turned to Mills sharply. You weren't supposed to know. You were supposed to treat every person with basic human dignity, regardless of how they look. Rodriguez stepped forward. Sergeant, I need to file my report. Officer Mills's behavior tonight was unprofessional and aggressive. The colonel was completely cooperative from the beginning. There was no cause for arrest. Mills pointed at Rodriguez angrily. You're my partner. You're supposed to have my back. I have the truth's back, Rodriguez replied firmly. That's my job. Bradley held up his hand. Rodriguez, file your report. Mills, you stay here. I'm calling Captain Morrison. She needs to hear about this immediately. Mills's face went pale at the mention of the captain. Captain Lisa Morrison was known for two things. She was absolutely fair and she did not tolerate bad policing. If she got involved, this could mean serious trouble for Mills. This is ridiculous, Mills muttered. I was doing my job. James spoke for the first time since the salute. His voice was calm but carried authority. Officer Mills, may I say something? Mills looked at him suspiciously but said nothing. James continued. Your job is to protect and serve all citizens, not just the ones who look wealthy, not just the ones who fit your expectations, all citizens. I sat on a public bench breaking no laws. I answered your questions. I showed you identification. I allowed you to search my belongings, yet you still arrested me. Why? Mills opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no good answer. I think I know why, James said quietly. And I think you know why too. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Mills could respond, the front door of the station burst open. Marcus Lopez rushed in, followed by 3 other men. They all wore military jackets and veteran caps. Behind them came a woman with a professional camera and a man with a microphone. The media had arrived. Where is Colonel Washington? Marcus called out. Bradley stepped forward. Gentlemen, please. This is a police station. You cannot just... We're here for the colonel, one of the other veterans said. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with a weathered face. We heard one of our brothers was arrested for being homeless. That's not happening, not on our watch. The reporter spotted James and rushed forward. Sir, are you Colonel James Washington? The one who was arrested tonight? Bradley tried to intercede. Ma'am, you cannot interview people in the middle of the police station. But James raised his hand. It's all right, Sergeant. I'll speak with them. He turned to the reporter. Yes, I am Colonel Washington. The camera light came on. The reporter lifted her microphone. Colonel, can you tell us what happened tonight? James thought carefully before speaking. He could destroy Mills right now. He could tell the whole story on camera. It would go viral. Mills would be finished. But James had spent his whole life trying to build bridges, not burn them. I was sitting on a public bench waiting for the VA shelter to open. Officer Mills approached me and asked me to move. When I explained that I was not breaking any laws, the situation escalated. I was arrested and brought here. Sergeant Bradley has since verified my identity and service record. The situation is being resolved. The reporter pressed further. Were you mistreated? Did Officer Mills use excessive force? James paused. Rodriguez watched him carefully. Mills held his breath. Everyone waited to hear what the colonel would say. I was treated roughly, James said finally. The handcuffs were very tight. The arrest was unnecessary. But I am okay. I have been in much more dangerous situations. Colonel, do you believe you were targeted because of your race? The reporter asked directly. The question made everyone uncomfortable. It was the question everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to say out loud. James met the camera straight on. I cannot know what was in Officer Mills' heart. I can only tell you what happened. I can tell you that I have experienced this kind of treatment before. I can tell you that many veterans, especially veterans of color, face these situations regularly. We serve our country with honor and then we come home to this. Marcus stepped forward. Colonel Washington is a hero. He saved my career with his mentorship. He saved countless lives in combat, and tonight he was arrested for sitting on a bench. This is wrong! The other veterans nodded and voiced their agreement. The lobby was getting crowded and tense. Bradley tried to restore order. Everyone, please. Let's all calm down. The colonel is safe. He is not being charged with anything. This is being handled. How is it being handled? The reporter demanded. Will Officer Mills face consequences for this false arrest? Before Bradley could answer, Captain Lisa Morrison walked through the door. She was a tall woman with dark skin and sharp eyes. She wore her uniform with absolute authority. When she entered a room, people paid attention. What is going on in my station? She demanded. The room fell silent. Even the reporter stopped talking. Bradley stepped forward. Captain, we have a situation. Officer Mills arrested a retired Army colonel tonight. A decorated veteran. The arrest was questionable. Morrison's eyes swept the room. They landed on James. She took in his appearance, his bearing, his calm dignity. Then she looked at Mills, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. Someone tell me exactly what happened. Now, Morrison ordered. Rodriguez spoke up. Captain, I'll tell you. Officer Mills and I responded to a call he made about a vagrant at Chen's convenience store. When we arrived, I found Colonel Washington sitting peacefully on a bench. He was cooperative and respectful throughout the encounter. Officer Mills searched his belongings without proper cause and refused to accept his military identification as genuine. Despite my objections, Officer Mills arrested the colonel on charges of trespassing and resisting arrest. Neither charge is valid. Morrison turned to Mills. Is this accurate, Officer Mills? Mills stammered. I thought he was a con artist. I've seen people fake military service before. I was trying to protect the integrity of... Did you verify his identification? Morrison cut him off. It looked fake, Mills said weakly. Did you call it in to verify it? Morrison pressed. Mills was silent. Did you have probable cause to search his belongings? Mills said nothing. Did he resist arrest in any way? He questioned my authority, Mills finally said. Morrison's expression turned cold. Questioning your authority is not resisting arrest. It is exercising his rights as a citizen. She walked over to James. Colonel Washington, I am Captain Lisa Morrison, commander of this precinct. On behalf of the entire department, I apologize for what happened to you tonight. This should never have occurred, James nodded. Thank you, Captain. Morrison turned back to Mills. Officer Mills, you are suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. Hand over your badge and weapon. The room gasped. Mills's face went white. Captain, you can't. I can and I am, Morrison said firmly. Your body camera footage will be reviewed. Witness statements will be taken, and you will answer for your actions tonight. Mills's hands shook as he removed his badge and unholstered his weapon. He placed them on Bradley's desk. The sound of metal hitting wood echoed in the silent lobby. Morrison continued. Furthermore, Internal Affairs will review your entire service record. I understand there have been previous complaints against you. Those will all be examined. Mills looked around the room, searching for support. He found none. Even the other officers avoided his eyes. They had all heard the stories about Mills. They had all looked the other way. But this time was different. This time there were cameras and witnesses and a hero who had been wronged. Morrison turned to James. Colonel, would you like to file a formal complaint against Officer Mills? James was quiet for a long moment. Everyone waited. The reporter's camera captured every second. Captain, James said finally, I do not seek revenge, but I do seek justice. And more importantly, I seek change. I want this to be a teaching moment. I want every officer in this department to learn from this. I want them to understand that every person deserves respect and dignity, regardless of how they look or where they sleep at night. Morrison nodded slowly. I understand, sir. And I agree. I promise you, this department will learn from this. We will do better. She turned to address the entire room. Let me be clear to everyone here. This is not who we are. This is not what we stand for. We are here to protect and serve all members of our community, all of them. If any officer cannot do that with fairness and respect, they do not belong in this department. The other officers nodded. Some looked ashamed. They had all known Mills was a problem. They should have spoken up sooner. Marcus stepped forward again. Colonel, sir, the Veterans Association has arranged temporary housing for you. You don't have to go back to the shelter. We're going to help you rebuild after your fire. James's eyes showed emotion for the first time all evening. Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know. The older veteran spoke up. Sir, we take care of our own. You served us. Now we serve you." The reporter moved closer. "Colonel Washington, what message do you have for other homeless veterans who might face similar treatment?" James thought carefully. "Know your worth. Know your rights. Stay calm. Stay dignified. And remember, you are not alone. There are people who will stand up for you. People who remember your service and honor your sacrifice." Morrison added, "And to those veterans I say this. If you are ever treated unfairly by anyone in this department, report it immediately. To me personally, if necessary. That is my direct promise to you." Bradley brought over some paperwork. "Colonel, these are the forms to officially drop all charges against you. They never should have been filed in the first place." James signed where indicated. As he did, Mills turned and walked out of the station. His shoulders were slumped. His career was essentially over. Everyone knew it. Rodriguez watched him go. Part of her felt bad. Mills had been her partner, but a bigger part of her felt relieved. She had seen him mistreat too many people. She had stayed silent too many times. Not anymore. The reporter wrapped up her interview and thanked James. She promised to run the story on the evening news. Marcus and the other veterans surrounded James, shaking his hand and offering support. The mood in the station had shifted completely. Captain Morrison pulled James aside to a quiet corner of the lobby. "Colonel, may I speak with you privately?" "Of course, Captain," James replied. They moved to her office. It was a simple room with a desk, filing cabinets, and a wall covered with commendations and photos. Morrison closed the door and gestured for James to sit. "Sir, I need to be honest with you," she began. "What happened tonight is not an isolated incident. Officer Mills has 17 previous complaints against him. 17. Most of them from people of color. And every single one was dismissed or filed away without proper investigation." James was not surprised. "That's the problem, isn't it? The pattern continues because no one stops it." Morrison nodded. "You are right, and I take responsibility for that. I've only been captain here for 6 months, but that's not an excuse. I should have looked deeper into Mills's record sooner." "What will happen now?" James asked. "A full internal affairs investigation. His body camera footage will be reviewed, witness statements will be collected, and all 17 previous complaints will be reopened and examined. If we find a pattern of misconduct, he will be terminated, and possibly face criminal charges for civil rights violations." James leaned back in his chair. "Captain, may I speak freely?" "Please do, sir. The problem is bigger than one officer. Mills is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is a system that protects bad officers, a system that ignores complaints, a system that teaches officers to see certain people as threats rather than citizens." Morrison listened carefully. She did not interrupt or defend. She simply listened. James continued. "I have been stopped by police many times in my life. Even in uniform, I have been questioned about whether I really belonged somewhere. After I retired and bought a nice car, I was pulled over 8 times in 6 months. Every time, the officers seemed surprised when they saw my military ID, as if someone who looked like me could not possibly afford that car honestly." "That should never happen," Morrison said quietly. "But it does. Every day. To thousands of people," James replied. "And tonight it happened while I was homeless. I became invisible. Less than human. Officer Mills did not see a veteran. He did not see a colonel. He did not see a man who served his country. He saw something he wanted to remove from his sight." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "What can we do? How do we fix this?" James thought carefully. "Training. Real training. Not just a one-day seminar that everyone forgets. Training that changes hearts and minds. Training that teaches officers to see people, not stereotypes. And accountability. Real accountability. When officers like Mills show a pattern of behavior, they cannot be protected. They must face consequences." "I agree completely," Morrison said. "Colonel, I would like to ask you something. Would you be willing to help us develop better training? Would you be willing to speak to our officers? To share your perspective?" James was surprised by the request. "You want me to train police officers?" "I want you to help us be better," Morrison clarified. "You have leadership experience. You have managed diverse teams in high-stress situations. You understand people, and you have personally experienced the problems we need to fix. Your voice would carry weight." James considered this. Part of him wanted to say no. He had been humiliated and arrested tonight. Why should he help the people who did that to him? But another part of him, The part that had spent 28 years serving others saw an opportunity to create real change. "I will think about it," James said finally. "But I want to be clear. I will not just tell officers what they want to hear. I will tell them the truth, even if it is uncomfortable." "That is exactly what we need," Morrison assured him. "Uncomfortable truths are the only ones worth hearing." There was a knock on the door. Sergeant Bradley poked his head in. "Captain, the media is asking if you want to make a statement." Morrison looked at James. "Would you be comfortable standing with me, showing that we are addressing this together?" James nodded. "Yes, but I want to make my own statement as well." "Absolutely," Morrison agreed. They walked back to the lobby together. The reporter had been joined by 2 others. News traveled fast. 3 cameras were set up. A small crowd of officers, veterans, and curious citizens filled the space. Morrison stepped in front of the cameras. Her posture was straight and her voice was clear. "I am Captain Lisa Morrison, commander of this precinct. Tonight, one of our officers made a serious error in judgment. Colonel James Washington, a decorated Army veteran with 28 years of service, was wrongfully arrested while sitting peacefully on a public bench. This arrest should never have happened. It represents a failure of proper police procedure, and more importantly, a failure of basic human respect." The cameras zoomed in on her face. Morrison continued, "Officer Derek Mills has been suspended pending a full internal affairs investigation. All previous complaints against him will be reviewed. If our investigation confirms a pattern of misconduct, he will be terminated. This department does not tolerate discrimination or abuse of power." She paused and looked directly into the cameras. "To the citizens of this city, especially our veteran community, I want to say this clearly. We failed you tonight. We failed, Colonel Washington. And I promise you, we will do better. We are implementing immediate reforms to our training and complaint procedures. We will create a civilian review board to examine cases of alleged misconduct, and we will work with community leaders, including veterans, to rebuild the trust that was broken tonight." The reporter started shouting questions, but Morrison held up her hand. "Colonel Washington would like to make a statement." James stepped forward. He was still wearing his old jacket and worn pants, but his bearing was that of a commander. Everyone in the room could see it now. "My name is James Washington. I am a retired colonel from the United States Army. I served for 28 years. I commanded soldiers in combat. I made life and death decisions. I saw friends die protecting our country. I was honored to serve." His voice was strong and clear. 2 weeks ago, my house burned down due to an electrical fire. I lost everything. While waiting for insurance and VA assistance, I became temporarily homeless. Tonight, I was sitting on a bench waiting for the shelter to open. I was not drunk. I was not causing trouble. I was simply existing, and for that I was arrested. The cameras captured every word. But I do not want this story to be only about me. I want it to be about all the homeless veterans in this city, in this country. Men and women who served with honor and now sleep in shelters or on the streets. They deserve better. They deserve respect. They deserve to be seen as human beings. Someone in the crowd called out, "Thank you, Colonel," James continued. "I also want this story to be about change. Real change. Not just firing one officer and moving on, but examining why this happened. Why Officer Mills felt comfortable treating me the way he did. Why 17 previous complaints against him were ignored. Why our systems protect bad officers instead of protecting citizens." He looked at Morrison. "Captain Morrison has promised to make changes. I believe her. But change requires more than promises. It requires action. It requires courage. It requires all of us to hold our institutions accountable." The reporters were silent, absorbing his words. "Finally, I want to say this to other veterans who are struggling," James said. "You are not forgotten. You are not alone. Your service matters. Your sacrifice matters. You matter. There are people who care, people who will fight for you. Reach out. Ask for help. Let us help you." Marcus wiped tears from his eyes. Several other veterans in the crowd nodded, their own eyes wet. "Thank you," James concluded simply. The reporters erupted with questions. "Colonel, will you sue the police department? Colonel, do you think Officer Mills is racist? Colonel, what will you do now?" Captain Morrison stepped in. "That's all for tonight. Thank you." The cameras stayed on as Morrison led James away from the media area. Bradley and Rodriguez approached them. "Sir," Rodriguez said to James, I want to apologize personally. I should have stopped Mills sooner. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I hesitated. That was cowardly. James looked at her with understanding. Officer Rodriguez, you did speak up. You filed an accurate report. You told the truth. That took courage. Many officers would not have done that. Rodriguez looked relieved, but still guilty. I should have done more. Learn from this, James said gently. And next time do more. That is all any of us can do. Learn and grow and do better. Bradley handed James a card. Colonel, this is the number for the VA case manager who handles housing emergencies. I already called and told her your situation. She said to call her any time, day or night. She'll get you connected with resources. Thank you, Sergeant, James said, taking the card. Marcus approached with the other veterans. Colonel, we have a hotel room ready for you. 2 nights paid for, and we're organizing a fundraiser to help with your housing costs. The American Legion has already pledged money. The VFW is on board too. James felt overwhelmed by the support. Just hours ago, he had been sitting alone on a bench wondering where his life had gone wrong. Now he was surrounded by people who cared, people who wanted to help. I don't know what to say, James admitted. His voice cracked slightly. You don't have to say anything, sir, the older veteran said. You've given us more than enough over the years. It's our turn to give back, Morrison spoke up. Colonel, I meant what I said about helping with training. When you are ready, please contact me. Here's my direct number. She handed him her card. James took it and nodded. I will call you, Captain, soon. The crowd began to disperse. The reporters left to file their stories. Officers returned to their duties. The veterans surrounded James, making plans to help him. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway of the station. She had walked from her store to check on James. Mr. James? Are you okay? James smiled at her. It was the first genuine smile he had shown all night. I am okay, Mrs. Chen. Thank you for speaking up for me. Of course, she said. You are a good man. Very good man. You come by my store tomorrow. I make you special dinner, no charge. You do not have to do that, James protested. I want to, Mrs. Chen insisted. You are my friend. The word touched James deeply. He had felt so alone these past 2 weeks, so invisible, but he was not alone. He had never been alone. People cared. People saw him. People valued him. As the group prepared to leave the station, a young officer approached hesitantly. He looked barely 25 years old. Colonel Washington, sir? May I speak with you for just a moment? Of course, James said. The young officer glanced around nervously. Sir, I just graduated from the academy 3 months ago. Tonight was the first time I have seen something like this. The first time I saw an officer clearly in the wrong, and I did not know what to do. I just stood there. I am ashamed. James put his hand on the young man's shoulder. What is your name? Officer Chen, David Chen, the young man replied. Officer Chen, you are just starting your career. You will face many situations where you must choose between what is easy and what is right. Tonight you learned an important lesson. You learned what the wrong choice looks like. Remember this feeling. Remember this shame, and let it guide you to make better choices in the future. Officer Chen nodded, his eyes serious. I will, sir. I promise. That is all I can ask, James said. 3 weeks passed since that November evening. The story had spread far beyond the local news. National media picked it up. Social media exploded with the video footage. The hashtag Justice for Colonel Washington trended for days. But James tried to stay away from the attention. He focused on rebuilding his life. The hotel room the veterans provided became a temporary home. Then Marcus helped him find a small apartment to rent while his house was being rebuilt. The Veterans Association covered the first 3 months of rent. Donations poured in from across the country. People sent money, furniture, clothes, and letters of support. James was grateful but also uncomfortable with all the attention. He had not done anything special. He had simply sat on a bench, but Marcus explained it differently. Sir, you did something very special, Marcus told him one afternoon as they moved boxes into the apartment. You showed dignity in the face of injustice. You stayed calm. You sought change instead of revenge. That is leadership. That is why people are responding. James arranged some books on a shelf. Most of them were new, donated by strangers. His old books had burned in the fire. I just did what seemed right. Exactly, Marcus said. And that is why you are a leader. The police investigation moved forward quickly. Captain Morrison made sure of that. She assigned 2 senior detectives to review everything related to Officer Mills. What they found was disturbing. Mills had been involved in 43 arrests over the past 5 years. 39 of those arrests were of Black or Latino individuals. Only 4 were white. The statistics were damning. But worse, when they reviewed his body camera footage from all those arrests, a clear pattern emerged. Mills spoke differently to people based on their race. He was polite and professional with white citizens, even when they were being difficult. But with people of color, his tone was harsh and aggressive from the very first words. He looked for reasons to search them. He interpreted every action as suspicious or threatening. The 17 complaints against him told similar stories. A Black businessman stopped for a broken taillight, searched for drugs without cause. A Latino teenager questioned aggressively for wearing a hoodie. An Asian college student accused of trespassing on his own campus. In every case, the complaints had been dismissed. The officers who investigated had been Mills's friends. They had protected him. They had enabled him to continue his pattern of behavior for years. Captain Morrison called a press conference to announce the findings. She stood at a podium with city officials behind her. The media crowded the room. After a thorough investigation, we have determined that Officer Derek Mills engaged in a pattern of discriminatory policing over multiple years. He targeted people of color for stops, searches, and arrests at a rate far exceeding statistical norms. His behavior violated department policy, state law, and the civil rights of numerous citizens. The cameras flashed as reporters took notes. Morrison continued. Officer Mills has been terminated from this department effective immediately. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case for possible criminal charges. Additionally, we are reopening all cases where Mills was the arresting officer to determine if any charges should be dismissed or if any convictions were wrongful. A reporter called out, "Captain, how was Mills allowed to continue this behavior for so long?" Morrison's face tightened. "That is a question we are taking very seriously. We have identified failures in our complaint review process. We have identified supervisors who should have intervened, but did not. Those individuals are facing disciplinary action as well." Another reporter asked, "Has Colonel Washington been involved in the investigation?" "Colonel Washington has been very gracious with his time," Morrison said. "He has provided his statement and has agreed to help us develop new training protocols. His input has been invaluable." After the press conference, Morrison called James. "Colonel, I wanted you to hear it from me directly. Mills is finished. He will never wear a badge again." "Thank you for telling me, Captain," James said. "But what about the system that protected him? What changes are being made?" "That is what I want to discuss with you," Morrison replied. "Would you be willing to come to the station tomorrow? I would like you to meet with our training staff and some community leaders. We are designing a new program, and we need your voice at the table," James agreed. The next morning, he arrived at the station. The atmosphere was different than his last visit. Officers greeted him respectfully. Several shook his hand and thanked him for his service. Captain Morrison led him to a conference room. Inside were several people: the chief of police, the head of training, 2 city council members, the president of the local NACP chapter, and several other community leaders. "Thank you all for coming," Morrison began. "We are here to design a new approach to policing in our city. An approach that centers on dignity, respect, and equal treatment for all citizens. Colonel Washington has agreed to help guide this process." James felt nervous. He was a soldier, not a social justice expert. But he had lived the experience they were trying to address. That counted for something. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They discussed implicit bias training, de-escalation techniques, community partnerships, and accountability measures. James shared his own experiences. He talked about the times he had been stopped and questioned. He talked about the fear he sometimes felt around police, even as a decorated officer. "Fear should not be the relationship between police and citizens," James said, "especially not for people who have done nothing wrong. When I see a police car behind me, my first thought should not be, what did I do? It should be, good, I am safe. But that is not how many people of color feel." The NACP president nodded vigorously. "That is exactly the problem. We have taught our children to be afraid of the people who are supposed to protect them." A city council member spoke up. "What concrete changes can we make?" What would actually work? James thought carefully. Start with recruitment. Recruit officers who reflect the community's diversity. Train them not just in tactics but in empathy. Teach them the history of policing and race in this country. Make them understand why distrust exists. Then give them tools to rebuild that trust. The police chief, a man named Roberts, listened carefully. We have tried diversity training before. It does not always work. That is because it is often a checkbox exercise, James replied. One afternoon of training and then everyone goes back to old habits. Real change requires ongoing education. It requires culture change. It requires leadership that models the right behavior. Roberts nodded slowly. You are right. We need to commit to this for the long term. They continued discussing specific programs. James suggested ride-alongs where officers spent time with community members in non-enforcement settings. He suggested creating advisory boards where citizens could give direct feedback. He suggested changing performance metrics so officers were not just evaluated on arrests, but on community relationships. By the end of the meeting, they had a draft plan. It would take time to implement. It would cost money. It would require political will. But everyone in the room agreed it was necessary. As the meeting ended, the police chief approached James. Colonel, I would like to offer you a formal position. We need a director of community relations and training, someone who can implement these changes and hold us accountable. Would you consider it? James was stunned. Chief, I'm not even sure I want to work with police right now. 3 weeks ago, I was arrested by one of your officers. I know, Roberts said, and that is exactly why we need you. You have experienced the worst of us. You can help us become the best of us. James did not answer immediately. Let me think about it. Please do, Roberts said. The position comes with a good salary, benefits, an office, and real authority to make changes. But more importantly, it comes with the opportunity to prevent what happened to you from happening to others. That night, James sat in his small apartment and thought about the offer. Part of him wanted nothing to do with the police department. Part of him was still angry about his arrest, but another part of him saw the opportunity to create lasting change. He called Marcus. I need advice. Marcus came over with pizza and they talked for hours. Sir, what does your gut tell you? My gut says I should do it, James admitted. But my pride says they do not deserve my help. Listen to your gut, Marcus said. Pride is about you. But this is bigger than you. Think about all the other veterans who might face what you faced. Think about the young black kids who grow up afraid of police. You could help change that. James knew Marcus was right. The next morning he called Chief Roberts. I will take the position, but I have conditions. Name them, Roberts said. I want direct access to you and the mayor. I want authority to review any complaint against any officer. I want budget to bring in outside experts. And I want protection from retaliation if I make unpopular decisions. You have all of that, Roberts agreed immediately. When can you start? Give me 2 weeks to prepare, James said. Those 2 weeks were busy. James researched best practices from police departments around the country. He read books on implicit bias and systemic racism. He met with community activists and civil rights attorneys. He wanted to be prepared. Officer Rodriguez, who had supported him from the beginning, volunteered to help. Sir, I want to be part of this change. Can I work with you? I would be honored, James said. Your courage that night showed me there are good officers who want to do the right thing. I need people like you, Rodriguez smiled. Thank you, sir. I have been thinking about what you said, about speaking up sooner, about doing more. I do not want to just be a good officer. I want to be part of making good policing. James also reconnected with Mrs. Chen. He visited her store regularly, always sitting on the same bench. People in the neighborhood recognized him now. They called him the Colonel with respect and affection. Mrs. Chen always made him tea. You are famous now, she teased. Too famous to sit on my bench? Never, James said. This bench is where it all started. This bench reminded me who I am. Who are you? Mrs. Chen asked with a knowing smile. I am a man who serves, James replied. That has never changed. The uniform changed, but the mission is the same. On his first day as Director of Community Relations and Training, James wore a suit. It was donated by a veteran-owned business. He felt strange in it. He was more comfortable in military fatigues or casual clothes. But he understood the importance of appearance in this role. Captain Morrison met him at the entrance. Colonel, welcome. Your office is ready." She led him to a corner office with windows overlooking the street. It was larger and nicer than any office he had expected. On the desk was a nameplate. Colonel James Washington, Director of Community Relations and Training. "This is too much," James said. "No," Morrison replied firmly. "This is exactly right. You are in leadership now. You need an office that reflects your authority. Officers need to see that you are someone they answer to." James understood. In the military, rank and position mattered. The same was true here. His first act was to schedule meetings with every officer in the department. He wanted to hear from them directly. What did they think about the changes? What concerns did they have? What ideas could they contribute? Some officers were enthusiastic. They welcomed the chance to improve community relations. Others were defensive or hostile. They saw James as an outsider who did not understand policing. A few were openly resentful. They thought Mills had been treated unfairly. James listened to everyone. He did not argue or judge. He simply absorbed information. He was gathering intelligence just like he had done in the military before any major operation. After 2 weeks of meetings, he had a clear picture. About 30% of officers were genuinely committed to good policing. About 50% would follow whatever leadership demanded. And about 20% were problems waiting to happen. Just like Mills, his job was to empower the good officers, guide the middle group, and remove the bad ones before they could cause harm. 1 year later, James stood in front of the police academy's graduating class. 50 new officers sat before him in crisp uniforms. Their faces were young and hopeful. They had just completed 6 months of training. In 1 week, they would be on the streets carrying badges and guns, making decisions that would affect people's lives. "Today is your last day of academy training," James began. "You have learned tactics. You have learned laws. You have learned procedures. But I am here to talk about something more important. I am here to talk about people." The room was silent. Every recruit paid attention. James's story was now part of the academy curriculum. They all knew what had happened to him. "When you put on that uniform, you carry immense power," James continued. "You can stop anyone. You can search anyone. You can arrest anyone. That power is given to you by the community. They trust you to use it wisely. Never forget that." He walked among the rows of seats, making eye contact with the recruits. "Some of you will patrol neighborhoods where people do not trust police, where children are taught to be afraid of you, where your presence causes anxiety instead of comfort. You did not create that distrust. It comes from years of bad policing, from officers who saw badge and gun as tools of power instead of tools of service. But you can change it, one interaction at a time." A young recruit raised her hand.
"Sir, how do we change something that big?"
"By seeing people," James answered simply. "Really seeing them. When you stop someone, do not just see a color or a neighborhood or a stereotype. See a human being, someone's son or daughter, someone's parent or friend, someone with hopes and fears and dignity that deserves respect." He returned to the front of the room. "Let me tell you what happened to me. Not the version you read in textbooks, but what it felt like." The recruits leaned forward. I was sitting on a bench minding my own business. I had lost my home. I had lost my possessions. But I had not lost my dignity. Then Officer Mills approached me, and in his eyes I saw something that hurt worse than the handcuffs. I saw that he did not see me at all. He saw a problem, something to be removed, something less than human. James's voice was steady but emotional. "I have been shot at in combat. I have faced enemy soldiers. But I have never felt as helpless as I did that night. Because I knew nothing I said would matter. Mills had already decided who I was based on how I looked." A recruit near the front had tears in her eyes. "Do not be that officer," James said firmly. "Do not be the person who makes someone feel invisible. Be the officer who sees people, who listens, who shows respect even in difficult situations. Be the officer you would want your own family to encounter." He paused and looked at each face. "You will make mistakes. You will have bad days. You will face dangerous situations where you must act quickly. But in the quiet moments, in the routine stops, in the everyday encounters, choose to see people. Choose dignity. Choose respect. That is the only way we rebuild trust." Chief Roberts stood at the back of the room, watching. He caught James's eye and nodded. The program James had built was working. Complaints were down 40%. Community satisfaction was up. Officers were being retrained, and the culture was slowly changing. After the speech, several recruits approached James with questions. They wanted to know how to handle specific situations, how to de-escalate conflicts, how to recognize their own biases. James answered each question patiently. Officer Rodriguez, now Sergeant Rodriguez, waited nearby. She had become James's second in command. Together they ran training sessions, reviewed complaints, and advised on policy changes. "Sir, that was powerful," Rodriguez said as they walked back to the office. "You reach them in ways I cannot." "You reach them differently," James corrected. "They need to hear from both of us. From you, they learn that officers can change and grow. From me, they learn what it feels like to be on the other side." Back at his office, James found a letter waiting on his desk. It was handwritten on simple notebook paper. He opened it and began to read. "Dear Colonel Washington, my name is Marcus Johnson. I'm 17 years old. Last week, I was stopped by Officer Chen while walking home from my part-time job. I was scared because I have been stopped before by police who were not nice to me. But Officer Chen was different. He was respectful. He explained why he stopped me. He listened when I answered. He even gave me advice about college applications. He told me you trained him. He said you taught him to see people, not problems. I wanted to thank you. Because of you and officers like Chen, I am not afraid anymore. I am thinking about becoming a police officer myself someday. Thank you for making things better. Sincerely, Marcus Johnson." James read the letter twice. His eyes were wet. This is why he took the job. This letter represented real change, real hope. He pinned it to his bulletin board where he could see it every day. His phone rang. It was Captain Morrison. "Colonel, can you come to my office? There is someone here who wants to meet you." James walked down the hall to Morrison's office. Inside, he found a young woman in a business suit. She looked nervous. "Colonel Washington, this is Attorney Sarah Mills," Morrison introduced. "She would like to speak with you." James froze. Mills. The same last name as the officer who had arrested him. Sarah stood and extended her hand. "Colonel, I'm Derek Mills' daughter." James hesitated, then shook her hand. "Ms. Mills, please sit," Morrison said. "Hear what she has to say." They all sat. Sarah took a deep breath. "Colonel, I came here to apologize. Not for my father, because only he can do that, but for myself. I knew what kind of man he was. I heard his comments at home. I saw how he talked about certain people, and I said nothing. I told myself it was not my business. But silence is complicity. I understand that now." James listened carefully. Sarah continued. "My father lost everything. His job, his reputation, his pension. He blames you. He tells anyone who will listen that you ruined his life." "I did not ruin his life," James said quietly. "His own actions did that." "I know," Sarah agreed. "That is what I told him. That is why he does not speak to me anymore. But I needed to tell you something. I am a civil rights attorney. I work for the ACLU. I represent people who have been mistreated by police, and I became an attorney because of officers like my father, because I saw the harm they caused and wanted to fight it." She pulled out a folder. "These are 3 cases I am currently handling. All involve officers from this department. All involve patterns of discriminatory policing. I wanted to share them with you because I think they need your attention." James took the folder. "Thank you for bringing these to me." "Thank you for being willing to look at them," Sarah replied. "A year ago, this department would have ignored these complaints. But because of you, there is hope for justice," Morrison spoke up. "Ms. Mills, we appreciate you coming forward with these cases. We will investigate them thoroughly." After Sarah left, Morrison turned to James. "That took courage. Coming here, facing you, sharing those cases?" "Yes," James agreed. "She is not responsible for her father's actions, but she is taking responsibility for making things better. That is admirable." Morrison leaned back in her chair. "You know, when I first took this job, I thought the problems were just a few bad officers. Remove them and everything would be fine. But you taught me it is much deeper than that. It is culture. It is systems. It is history. And it takes time to change," James added. "We have made progress in 1 year, but this is a lifetime project." "Are you in it for the lifetime?" Morrison asked. James thought about the question. A year ago, he had been sitting on a bench, homeless and invisible. Now he had an apartment, a job, and a purpose. More importantly, he had hope. "Yes," he said, "I am in it for the lifetime." 6 months later, James stood outside Chen's convenience store. The city had installed a memorial plaque on his bench. It read, "In honor of all veterans who have served our country, may they always find respect and dignity at home." Mrs. Chen stood beside him at the dedication ceremony. The mayor was there, Chief Roberts, Captain Morrison, dozens of veterans, and a crowd of community members who had heard James's story. "This bench changed my life," James told the crowd. "It was here that I faced injustice, but it was also here that people stood up for me." Mrs. Chen, Marcus Lopez, Officer Rodriguez. "This bench represents both the problem and the solution. The problem of how we treat our most vulnerable, and the solution of how we can be better when we choose to care." A young boy in the crowd raised his hand. "Are you still homeless, sir?" James smiled. "No, my house was rebuilt 6 months ago. It is better than before. And I added a guest room for veterans who need a place to stay." "Do people stay with you?" the boy asked. "Yes," James replied. "Last month, a young veteran who returned from overseas needed help. He stayed with me while he found a job and an apartment. This month, there is a woman veteran recovering from surgery. My home is open to anyone who served." The boy's mother, a black woman in her 30s, spoke up. "Colonel, because of you, I am not afraid to call the police anymore. Last week, there was a problem in my neighborhood. I called, and Officer Chen responded. He was respectful and helpful. That never would have happened before." Others in the crowd nodded and shared similar stories. The culture was changing, slowly, but measurably. After the ceremony, Marcus Lopez approached James. He had news. "Sir, I have been accepted into the police academy. I start next month." James clasped his shoulder. "You will be an excellent officer, Marcus. I want to be like you, sir. Someone who serves with honor." "Then be yourself," James advised. "Bring your own experiences, your own perspective. The department needs diverse voices. It needs people who understand what it is like to be afraid of police, because that understanding creates empathy." Young Officer Chen joined them. He had just finished his first year on the force. "Sir, I wanted you to know I stopped a situation today that could have gone badly. A teenager was acting suspicious in a parking lot. The old me would have approached aggressively, but I remembered your training. I started with respect. Turns out the kid was lost and looking for his mom's car. I helped him find it. No arrest, no confrontation. Just help." "That is good policing," James said. "That is what we need." As the sun set, people began to leave. James sat on his bench one last time before heading home. He thought about everything that had happened. The fire, the arrest, the humiliation, the anger, but also the support, the change. The hope Officer Mills had tried to make him invisible, to erase his dignity, to treat him as less than human. But instead, Mills's actions had given James a platform to create change, to teach, to lead, to make sure no one else experienced what he had experienced. Sometimes James thought the universe works in strange ways. The worst night of his life had become the catalyst for the best work of his life. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Chief Roberts. "Colonel, the mayor wants to talk to you about expanding the program statewide. Can you meet tomorrow?" James smiled. The work continued. The mission never ended. He typed back, "Yes, I will be there." As he walked home, he passed young people on the street. Some recognized him and waved. One teenage girl called out, "Thank you, Colonel. My brother wants to be a cop now because of you." James waved back. This was why he served, not for recognition or praise, but for the chance to make tomorrow better than today, to give young people hope, to show that change was possible. When he reached his house, he found Sergeant Rodriguez waiting on the porch. "Sir, sorry to bother you at home, but we have a situation. A homeless veteran was arrested tonight for sleeping in a park. The officer wants to charge him with trespassing. I think we should review it." James sighed, but not with frustration, with determination. "Let's go," he said, because the work was never done. There would always be another officer who needed training, another veteran who needed help, another person who needed someone to see their dignity. But now there was a system in place to help. There were officers like Rodriguez who cared. There were leaders like Morrison who supported change. There were community members who demanded better. And there was James, still serving, still fighting, still believing that one person's courage could change the world. As they drove back to the station, Rodriguez asked, Do you ever regret taking this job? Do you ever wish you had just walked away after what happened? James thought for a moment. No, he said finally. Because walking away would have meant Mills won. It would have meant nothing changed. I refused to let my worst night define me. Instead, I let it direct me. Toward purpose. Toward service. Toward making sure others do not suffer what I suffered. You are an inspiration, sir, Rodriguez said. I am just a man who chose to care, James replied. We all have that choice. Every single day, we can choose to see people or ignore them, choose to help or turn away, choose to be part of the problem or part of the solution. I simply chose service, because that is who I have always been. That is who I will always be. They pulled into the station parking lot. Another night. Another situation. Another chance to make a difference. Colonel James Washington got out of the car and walked toward the building. His back was straight. His head was high. His purpose was clear. He had served his country in war. Now he served his community in peace. The uniform had changed, but the mission remained the same. Protect and serve with honor and dignity, one person at a time. And that was enough. That was everything.